Hi again. Here we are to talk more about CSS. Let's go over some notes. Okay, so what is CSS good for? Well, CSS and HTML were sort of designed to work together, and they were designed to separate content and presentation. Okay, so the idea is the structure of your page is handled by the structure and the content are handled by the HTML, and they're totally independent of the presentation or the style of your page, which is handled by CSS. And this has huge advantages, right? Because separating the two allows you to change the style of your page without adjusting the content, or to change the content without having to work with the styles. Okay, and there's a lot to this, and the more you work with it, the more you're going to appreciate that. Okay, next. CSS itself is just a kind of a static language that just describes the visual description of things. And it actually can do a little more than that. It can also be like an audio description of things. And I'll talk more about that later. If you have a screen reader or some kind of, accessibility feature that reads or does something different, maybe it does Braille or some other thing, right, besides just the visual appearance. CSS actually can handle that also, okay? CSS is super powerful, right? You can set the font size, the color, the spacing, the border, like all these properties. You can also set the position of elements on the page, okay? You can set the size of images, and you can give elements an image as a fill that'll be tiled, like as a background pattern or something, okay? You can also assign a fill image in the border, okay? So there's all these things you can do, and you can control how those fill images appear. Okay, you can also animate elements on the page. Okay, you can rotate and move elements in 3D. So imagine like you have a square on the page, but it looks kind of like a playing card that you're rotating along its y-axis. So there's all sorts of things you can do. Okay, you can also apply styles for interactive states. So when you hover over something, the style can change, and then you can animate the object and animate that change. Okay, so super powerful. There's all sorts of things you can do with this. Okay, so we got to learn all the properties and kind of get a library of those working in our heads so we understand them, and then we can start applying animation and 3D effects. Okay, let's take a look at this selector quiz, right? So this will give you an idea of how some of the selectors work. You don't have to memorize all these because there's a lot of different selectors. There's a few selectors that you should learn, and they're in here too. But take this quiz just for fun and see if you can figure it out, okay? I'll click on this link, and this goes to fluke.github. This is the CSS diner, okay? And what you're going to see here is you're going to see these funny plates here, right? And when I hover over one, it says that's a plate, but it's the tag, right? Okay, and this is the HTML that they have down here. So we have a div that's class table, and then there's two plates inside the table. Okay, that makes sense, right? And what you're going to do is you're going to type your CSS selector here. Okay, so it says select the plates. And if we read over here, it says select elements by their type. That's tag, right? Selects all elements of type A. Type A refers to the tag. So if div, p, ul are different tags, right? So div would select all div elements, and p would select all p elements, right? Okay. In our case, we have two plate elements. So if we wanted to select those, you could type in plate, right? And there we go. So I did it, right? And then I just hit return, or you can tap enter, right? And there I did that one, and it says, sorry, incorrect, right? So what do they want to do here? They say select the bento boxes. So you can see here I've got a bento box, a plate, and another bento box, right? So here this one's pretty easy. We can use the tag selector again. I can type in bento, and it will get these two, but it won't get the plate. So I hit return or enter right there, and I've got them. So now it says select the fancy plate. So the fancy here, it's saying like ID selector. So IDs, I didn't talk about these, but in the last video I talked about class, and it begins with a dot. IDs begin with the hash mark or the number sign, right? So, if you type in, number sign cool in your style sheet, it will select everything that has the attribute ID equals cool, right? So over here, when I look at the selectors there, you can see that plate ID equals fancy is what they want us to select. So over here, we would type number sign, fancy, and then we can hit enter. Okay, and it selects the fancy plate. So your goal is to go through all of these. There's 26 questions. You have to read the text here, follow the instructions, and then select the element by typing the correct selector. And some of these get a little tricky, okay? So, do as many as you can. You don't have to know all of these, okay? But this will really kind of give you the power of CSS, okay? So I'm going to close that. Let's go back to my notes here. Actually, you know what? I closed the one that I wanted to keep there. Let me go back and open it up again. And here we are, right? So, so what selectors do you really need to know? Okay, so to get a lot done, the selectors that you probably are going to use the most often, and look these up in the quiz, right? The tag selector, the class selector, the descendant selector, and the child selector. So these 4 allow you to do a huge number of things. These are probably the 4 most useful selectors. So look those up, and then also look up these. These are called pseudo selectors. They begin with a colon, okay? And there's link, visited, hover, and active. So look up those guys, and then look up these first. Find them in the quiz, and then look at the other ones in the quiz. These are 4 the most useful. Make sure you understand these, right? So anyway, good luck with that, and have fun.